Our news live at 7. Thanks for joining us. I'm Candino Knowles. While lawyers get set to do battle in United States courts over the collapse of crypto trader FTX, the Prime Minister is trying to clear the air over claims that members of the PLP received gifts or contributions from FTX. He's also claiming foreign media reports are unfair. Berthany McDermott gets us started tonight.
Prime Minister Philip Davis shooting down claims that the PLP received donations from FTX. The Prime Minister also insisting he has no interest in FTX.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, and what about cabinet ministers? Anything connected to FTX?
I do not know that. In fact, I'm agnostic to it. I don't hold any wallet.
Recent court filings in Delaware revealed FTX owes its top 50 creditors over $3 billion. The Security Commission froze FTX's assets and applied to the Supreme Court to appoint Brian Sims KC as a court-supervised provisional liquidator. 2 other provisional liquidators have since been named. The Prime Minister also shot down that the government has any exposure to the debacle surrounding the company's collapse.
The only issue I'm concerned about, I have positioned the Bahamas to be the leading jurisdiction in the digital assets space. I'm intending to keep that position, and the only thing of concern is reputational consequences, and I'm dealing with that.
The Bahamas is facing heavy criticism in the international arena due to the company's collapse. Davis is calling it unfair characterizations.
I'm not concerned about our reputation in that regard, because most of what is being said is the posturing of persons who would wish to have the liquidation under their control. So once that is settled, you'll see that everything will just blow away.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
And in related news, even though he's been pushed out of the company he founded, Sam Bankman-Fried telling CNBC he is trying to lock down a multi-billion-dollar deal to bail out FTX, saying he's focused on retrieving customer funds. Bankman-Fried claims he is still on a quest to secure a deal. The former CEO maintaining there are billions of dollars in customer assets in jurisdictions where there were segregated balances, including in the U.S. He's also saying there are billions of dollars of potential funding opportunities out there to make customers whole. FTX CEO John Ray also saying this weekend that he is exploring sale options for the company as they launch a strategic review of its global assets. Meanwhile, a hearing on FTX's so-called first day motion is set for Tuesday morning. Now to another story we've been following. Growing shanty towns, a growing problem for Abaco. South Abaco MP John Pinder says while tourism numbers are climbing and the economy looks good, the biggest threat at this point are the shanty towns in the north.
Particularly the even playing field for Bahamians that have to go through so much paperwork and permitting to build on and purchase land to do so. And then you have others that do it without any of that. And it's creating a uneven and unfair advantage.
We've got the full comments from the Abaco MP during our news at 7:30, but the Haitian migrant problem isn't just confined to shanty towns. 217 migrants are now in the custody of immigration after a U.S. Coast Guard cutter caught them 6 miles off Dog Rock near Keysal Bank. The Department of Immigration, in a press release, confirming the group is in the capital following medical checks. The statement also says arrangements are being made for a deportation. Authorities say facilities at Matthew Town and Nagua are now operational should they see an increase in migrant interceptions. And the back and forth over the BPL hedging program continues. In the latest, the Prime Minister maintaining he had no knowledge of the proposal request. It's a clear contradiction to what Works Minister Alfred Sayers said last week. Sayers saying that the Finance Minister, who happens to also be the Prime Minister, rejected recommendations to continue trades for BPL's fuel hedging program. But Davis maintains that prior to that weekend, he had no knowledge of this.
I had no knowledge of it. I saw no documents about that. Only this weekend, I was provided with some information concerning that, which I am now assessing to determine all these misstatements about what actually went on.
Well, the Prime Minister had much more to say on the issue. We've got the full story coming up in our news at 7:30, and we've got much more to get to in this half hour, including the murder charge for a 21-year-old man. But for now, we hand things over to meteorologist Greg Thompson over in the Weather Center with your first look at temperatures. Greg?
Yeah, good evening, Kendino, and a happy Monday evening, everybody. A very moist and wet conditions outside our studios right now. We have mostly cloudy skies. Your temperatures at 81 degrees. Your winds are out of the east at 7 miles per hour. Your feels like temperature, a very comfortable 79 degrees on the outside. Right now, around the remainder of the islands, it's 74 in Freeport, Grand Bahama. Over in Marsh Harbour, Abaco, as well as in Alistown, Bermuda, you're at 78. 75 in Great Harbour Key. We pick up a pair of 79s in Nicholstown, Andros, as well as in Governor's Harbour, Eleuthera. Into the central Bahamas, temperatures a little warmer as we don't have much in terms of any clouds there. 81 degrees in Kemp's Base, 83 in Arthurstown, pardon me, that's Cat Island. 80 in Copenhagen, San Salvador, Georgetown, 83. Over in Deadman's Key, you guys are 85 at this hour. Into the deep south, temperatures in the low to mid 80s there. 81 in Colonel Hill, Cricket Island. We pick up 85 in Duncantown, Ragged Island. Delectable Bay, Acklands, 83. 82 in Abrahams Bay, Meguana. Matthewtown, Inagua as well, you are 82, and our neighbors to the southeast, Turks and Caicos Islands, you guys are 83 at this hour. On our satellite, that moisture plume and that stationary front, a very stubborn front actually, is not really doing much. It's oscillating across the northwest Bahamas. Lots of moisture associated with that front and showers and isolated thunderstorms across the northwest Bahamas. Most of the activity actually was across the Florida area, South Florida. They got quite a bit of rainfall. But we got some rainfall across our area, some share of that, and measurements, well, close to about half an inch, maybe even up to an inch in some isolated spots. The remainder of the islands, very nice and quiet. High pressure from the Atlantic is dominating that. We expect this front to lift back towards north by tomorrow, and then it's expected to drift back across our area by Wednesday. So we're looking for some more showers during that time frame. That's your first check on weather. Stick with us, a look at the tropics, and your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on our news, 2 traffic deaths this weekend. We've got highlights from a news conference earlier today. Police investigate a series of sexual assaults over the past few days. Different incidents, but similar accounts of attacks on women. And still, the Industrial Tribunal begins the legal year. We'll tell you what's next for these courts handling workplace disputes. It's all coming up when Our News returns. Police closing investigations into 3 recent murders after arresting and charging 21-year-old Machino McKenzie with the crimes. Prosecutors say the Rupert Dean Lane resident is responsible for fatal shootings within days of each other. McKenzie stood before Magistrate Samuel McKinney, charged with the October 30th murders of Andrew Burrows and Lakeithra Stubbs at Rock Crusher Road. There is also charges for the attempted murders of Rikara Colley and Johnny Severe, who were also shot in the same incident. Prosecutors also alleging McKenzie gunned down Avrion Duncanson shortly after he pulled up to a liquor store at Foster Street on November 12th. McKenzie was denied bail and is due back in court on February 2nd. And traffic police are investigating 2 overnight fatalities, leaving a man and a woman dead. Police say the first incident happening just before 9:30 p.m. in Gregorytown, Eleuthera, when a woman in a Nissan Note crashed into a casuarina tree. The male driver was airlifted to New Providence, where he remains in serious condition. The woman died on the scene. In the earlier incident here in New Providence, police say a 62-year-old man was walking in the Carmichael Road area around 7:30 p.m. when he was struck by a vehicle. He was taken to hospital by EMS personnel but died shortly after. Investigations into both matters continue. And police addressing those deadly accidents this afternoon and issuing a warning to drivers. We'll have the full story during our news at 7:30. Meanwhile, police in Andros and New Providence are probing 3 sexual assault incidents. The first happening on Friday when a 27-year-old resident of Andros reported she was asleep and a man she knew forced his way into her home and sexually assaulted her. A 24-year-old Androsian man is in custody. Also on Friday, a 37-year-old New Providence woman says a man she knows came to her home uninvited and attempted to sexually assault her. The third incident happening Saturday. Police say a 20-year-old New Providence woman reporting that a masked man forced his way into her home and sexually assaulted her. He escaped from the scene on foot. A search for the suspects in New Providence continues. 5 guns and 20 rounds of ammunition were taken off the streets last week, resulting in the arrest of 4 men. Police making those arrests between November 14th and 20th as part of Operation Ceasefire, along with officers from the Grove and Traffic Police Station. Now to this. Prime Minister Philip Davis announcing today that after extensive consultation with national, regional and international stakeholders, the executive of the National Tripartite Council has drafted the Industrial Court Bill 2022 and presented it to the Minister of Labour and Immigration for review.
That the National Tripartite Council has subsequently initiated an additional period of public consultation with national stakeholders, and it is expected that a formal presentation on the draft legislation will be presented to Cabinet for consideration and approval, and consequently tabling for debate and enactment by Parliament.
The Prime Minister's comments coming at the opening of the legal year of the Industrial Tribunal. The Chief Justice also making an address. Our Jamila Mizik has a full story coming up at 7:30. When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as 56 people die in a quake in Indonesia. The search continues for survivors in the rubble. Plus, a preview of this week's As I See It online opinion piece. Is there trouble in the Maikau constituency? And later, hear what the Prime Minister is saying about a new loss and damage fund linked to climate change when Our News returns. This is Our News. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. 56 people are dead and as many as 700 are still missing following an earthquake on the Indonesian island of Java. The quake, with a magnitude of 5.6, struck a densely populated area prone to landslides with poorly built homes. Scores of people were rushed to hospital, with many treated outside. Rescuers are working day and night to try and get those thought to be trapped in collapsed buildings. The death toll and number of injuries are likely to increase.
There's a road that has not been evacuated, which is Mangan. Because the road is completely blocked by landslide, they cannot be evacuated yet.
Meanwhile, China is reporting its first COVID deaths in 6 months. With fresh warnings, the capital is facing its most severe situation since the start of the pandemic. 3 fatalities reported in Beijing since Saturday, bringing the official death toll to 5,229. The deaths are amid rare protests over China's zero COVID policy. The controversial strategy is seeing millions locked down and positive cases forcibly quarantined. Officials in Beijing are already imposing lockdowns in commercial and school districts, with 3 million people urged to stay at home. New Zealand Supreme Court ruling that the country's voting age of 18 is discriminatory. The ruling now means Parliament must discuss whether it should be lowered. The case was brought by a campaign group called Make It 16, which wants the voting age reduced to include 16 and 17-year-olds. They argue that young people should be able to vote on matters affecting them.
I personally support a decrease in the voting age, but it is not a matter simply for me or even the government. Any change in electoral law of this nature requires 75% of parliamentarian support. That's why it's our view that this is an issue best placed to Parliament for everyone to have their say.
Because I feel like they're probably slightly more educated, being at school, hopefully, than some of the early 20-year-old or mid-20s that don't really seem to have much of an idea what's going on in the world.
Well, when I was 16, I didn't have enough knowledge to make a decent decision, no.
And I think at that age, they don't really have life experience enough to be making those decisions.
Well, I think nowadays that kids these days are getting more progressive, and it would be a good idea to have a younger voting age. I think everyone should be able to vote.
Twitter's new owner, Elon Musk, is reinstating Donald Trump's Twitter account after running a poll in which users narrowly backed the move. He tweeted, "The people have spoken," saying that 51.8% of more than 15 million Twitter users voted for the ban to be lifted. But the former U.S. president may not return to the platform, saying, "I don't see any reason for it." His account was suspended in 2021 due to the risk of inciting violence. The social media company's previous management acted just days after Trump's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Hundreds of anti-government protesters taking to the streets in Lima, Peru, demanding the resignation of President Pedro Castillo. Since taking office in July of 2021, he has already faced 2 impeachment attempts. Opposition lawmakers are also seeking to launch a 3rd impeachment, but do not have the votes needed to push it through. President Castillo has not commented publicly to the unrest.
We are against this government that has shown that the only thing they have to come here to do is plunder this country.
And Canada is expanding its economic sanctions, freezing the Canadian assets of Haitian political elites to include former President Michel Martelly and former Prime Minister Laurent Lamont and Jean-Henri Sion. The Canadian foreign minister this weekend accused the trio of helping gangs to undermine Haiti's current government, calling on international partners to follow Canada's lead. That country continues to be paralyzed by gang warfare. Haiti's foreign minister said the new sanctions put real consequences on those causing a nightmare. And here at home, Prime Minister Davis reacting to the formation of a loss and damage fund for countries impacted by climate change. The announcement came out of the recent COP27 meeting in Egypt. Davis, along with other regional leaders, have been pushing for action for quite some time now.
As you know, that was one of the reasons why I went, to ensure that we first of all got loss and damage on the agenda. We were able to succeed in getting it on the agenda. They did it without an excluded liability. Fortunately, we were able to add liability discussion, and look where we are now.
Will we still be benefiting from that?
I hope to.
And still to come in our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was November 21st. Plus, Greg is back with your extended weather forecast. And then in our news at 7:30, meet a Bahamian living in the United States and coaching a Power 5 University women's basketball team. She sat down with our Sasha Lightbourne today. Our news continues in a moment. Welcome back to Our News. In the ournews.bs column, as I see it, columnist Tanya Smith-Cartwright is putting the spotlight on the PLP's held constituency Michael. Smith-Cartwright writing that there seems to be more grumblings of dissatisfaction in its current representation, with some saying Shane Gibson Sr. is most favored to be the next MP for the area, and posits a possible by-election, considering Gibson is said to be considering public office once again. It's quite an interesting read, which you can find now available online. You can read today and every Monday in the opinion section at ournews.bs. And it's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was, including the stories of some of the first Bahamian police commissioners in an independent Bahamas. Take a look. On this day in 1878, Bishop Francis Kramer Roberts, his wife and 2 children arrived in Nassau to take up his post as Bishop of Nassau. Although he achieved much in consolidating the work of the church, it was also a period of sadness. It is said that his first wife and all their children died here. And when his second wife became ill in May 1885, Bishop Kramer Roberts resigned and returned to England. Then in 1921, Gerald Augustus Bartlett was born in 8 Mile Rock, Grand Bahama. Bartlett served as commissioner of the Royal Bahamas Police Force from 1981 to 1987. His career on the force spanned 41 years. Following his retirement on his 66th birthday in 1987, Bernard Kenneth Bonamy became the 3rd Bahamian commissioner appointed in an independent Bahamas. Commissioner Bonamy, who enlisted into the force in 1963, was noted for transitioning the force into the digital age of technology with the introduction of computerization in 1989 and his zero-tolerance stance on narcotics trafficking. Then, on November 21, 2001, Paul H. Farquharson succeeded Bonamy, becoming the fourth Bahamian commissioner. Farquharson, who held the top post for 8 years, is noted for his community policing initiatives, improving the image of the force and transforming it into an intelligence-led policing organization. Situated on the corner of Market and McPherson Streets, the People's Penny Savings Bank opened on this day in 1952. A few important facts about the bank reprinted from the program created for its opening include the idea for the bank, which was first conceived by a group of 10 men on the 14th of September in 1951. The men met weekly and deposited small amounts regularly. The bank's chief objective was to inculcate the minds of Bahamian people with the virtue of thrift until it became a habit, and to provide the people with a quick, easy, and safe means of savings for a rainy day. The plans for the bank's building were drawn by Mr. Percy Hanna, the assistant secretary, while Mr. George Hepburn was the person responsible for the construction, the foundation of which was poured by charter members 4 months prior to its opening. And finally, in world history, on this day in 2017, Zimbabwe's president, Robert Mugabe, resigned, ending 4 decades of rule. Mugabe was given full diplomatic status. He was permitted to keep the business interests and other wealth which he had amassed while in power, and received an additional payment of about $10 million. Mugabe died in 2019. To some, he was a liberation hero who stood by his principles. Others say he rigged elections, destroyed the economy of what was once Africa's breadbasket, and terrorized his people for decades. Now, to watch that and all of the latest news, visit ournews.bs, and remember, you can share your favorite stories right from the Our News Facebook page. That's going to do it for us in News at 7. Natalia Hall is here now with the latest headlines.
Thanks, Ken. The FTX story still unfolding now into its second week. And tonight, the Prime Minister on the record, and we're learning more that top executives have been let go.
Unregulated and growing, shanty towns in Abaco, a worrying problem for government. The MP for the island shares his concerns with us. And help is on the way. The new Chief Justice promising to address the problems plaguing the courts. We'll tell you what's on his wish list. And police say drivers beware after a series of traffic fatalities. And later, the Prime Minister giving some contradictory statements over the BPL fuel hedging saga. Our News Live at 7:30 starts in a moment.
Welcome to our news, and thank you for joining us. I'm Natalia Hall. A growing problem in Abaco. The MP for South Abaco, John Pinder, says despite rebounding tourism and the economy, the fast-growing unregulated shanty towns are concerning.
It's a speed bump to our recovery, but nothing that we can't handle.
The Abaco MP says an announcement will be made about a multi-million-dollar project in South Abaco soon. And as for the growing number of unregulated homes being built on that northern island, he says it's a major concern for him.
Particularly the even playing field for Bahamians that have to go through so much paperwork and permitting to build on and purchase land to do so. And then you have others that do it without any of that, and it's creating a uneven and unfair advantage.
Last month, Immigration Minister Keith Bell revealed that one Abaco shanty town has tripled in size. He also promised officials would step up their presence on the island. The Central and South Abaco MP says that's not the only worry, adding that there are also concerns about the water fields on that island.
Don't have the proper sanitization infrastructure set up, then it is then it is a problem for all of Abaco. So I want to make sure that it's a safe environment for all residents, but first and foremost have Bahamians and Abaconians come first.
While the Haitian migrant problem is not just confined to shanty towns, 270 migrants are now in the custody of immigration after a U.S. Coast Guard cutter caught them 6 miles off Dog Rock near Kisau Bank. A Department of Immigration press release confirming the group is in the capital following medical checks. The statement also says arrangements are being made for deportation. Now, facilities at Matthewtown and Nagua are now operational should authorities see an increase in migrant interceptions. When first appointed, Chief Justice Ian Winder promised to address many of the long-standing issues within the justice system, and the list is long. Jamila Mizik picks up the story from here.
Chief Justice Ian Winder says efforts to establish several specialty courts are well underway. These include a family court, a sexual offences court, and a commercial court.
My predecessor and the executive identified the use of the Hansard building to be the sexual offense court because of its isolation and ability and the space to allow for witnesses and victims to be separated. In respect to the family court, they've identified a site, and they're moving to establish those courts to bring the magistrate courts that deal with family matters as well as the Supreme Courts that deal with family matters in one space.
As it relates to the issue of backlogs in the coroner's court, Chief Justice Winder says a major hurdle is getting a marshal for the evidence.
And I think there was a difficulty in identifying a prosecutor. Some coroner's inquests are going on, but the police-involved shootings, which I think is probably the greater concern, they're waiting for a marshal to get most of those underway.
In terms of manpower, he says they are undergoing a competitive recruitment process in hopes of seeking 4 to 5 judges early in the new year.
We would have appointed 3 acting judges, and that process really was to delist 2 of our judges who had challenges with backlogs. So, and they're allowing them to write their judgments to be able to catch up in respect to those.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
Thanks, Jamila. A man is on bail for incest, who was on bail for incest, is back in custody on accusations that he forced 2 children to perform sex acts on each other. The 28-year-old resident of Mount Tabor Estates, who we are not naming to protect his victims, faced 3 counts of cruelty to children when he appeared before Senior Magistrate Carr Turnquest DeVoe. The incidents involved a 6-year-old boy and girl. The acts allegedly took place in 2020 and 2021. Now, the man denied the accusations at his arraignment and was denied bail. He's due back in court on November 28th for the incest case. 6 men are in legal hot water tonight after police say they violated their bail conditions. Officers attached to the electronic monitoring unit arrested the men whose ages range from 18 to 56 years old between November 14th and November 20th. They were on bail for serious offenses like murder, armed robbery, and threats of death. Well, an Anagua man is behind bars after police found $800 worth of cocaine in his home. Police say officers on that island executed a search warrant at his Courtright Street home around 6:30 a.m. on Sunday. During that search, they found the 2 ounces of suspected cocaine. The 53-year-old suspect was arrested, and police investigations are continuing. Police are questioning 4 men in San Salvador in connection with a marijuana fine. Reports are that shortly before 8 a.m. on Sunday, officers executed a search warrant on a home in Sugarloaf, San Salvador, when they found drugs at the back of the home. The 10 grams of marijuana have an estimated street value of $100. Investigations are continuing. Some cool temperatures in the nation's capital this evening. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is standing by in the Weather Center with a first look at weather.
The weather is brought to you by Confidence Insurance Bahamas Agency Limited. At Confidence Insurance, we care and we serve.
Yeah, thanks, Natalia, and happy Monday evening, everybody. Moist conditions outside our studios right now, mostly cloudy skies. Temperatures in the low 80s, 81 degrees outside our studios. Your winds are now out of the east at 7 miles per hour, and your feels like temperature at 79. Satellite view, that stubborn stationary front is still hanging out across the northwest Bahamas. That's continuing to generate some showers and some thunderstorms, as well as cloudy conditions across the northwest Bahamas. Central and southeast Bahamas remaining quiet, but that moisture plume will continue across us as as that stationary front is going to slowly move towards the north, should exit the northern islands by tomorrow, but we expect this frontal boundary once again to be sagging back towards the south. So we're looking at just a slight break by tomorrow afternoon, and then more moisture moving in across the area by Wednesday into Thursday. That's a look at our weather. This weather segment is brought to you by Confidence Insurance. At Confidence Insurance, we care and we serve.
Still to come on our news, after 2 weekend fatalities, police send a warning to road users. And more on those FTX firings at the top. Plus, the Prime Minister says his members did not benefit from any FTX gifts. Here's what he's saying. And later, a Bahamian female coach at the helm of one of the top college basketball ladies teams in the U.S. That's coming up when our news returns. Police need your help in finding a hitchhiker they say allegedly stabbed a 28-year-old man. The incident happening around 3:30 a.m. on Saturday in the area of Mermaid Boulevard. Police say the victim was helping the male hitchhiker when he saw the man trying to steal his cell phone. The driver confronted his passenger, and that's when police say he was stabbed. The suspect fled the car, and the victim was taken to hospital where his condition is serious. Now, if you have any information that you think can help police solve the crime, you can contact them at telephone numbers 911, 919, or Crime Stoppers at 328-TIPS. Officers from the Police Traffic Division asking the motoring public to be a lot more careful on the roads. This after a spike in traffic fatalities over the weekend in Acklands, Andros, New Providence, and Eleuthera. Head of the Police Traffic Division, Chief Superintendent David Lockhart.
In light of 4 fatal crashes that occurred in the past 48 hours, we can tell you that the contributing factor to these fatalities have been careless pedestrians, in excess of speed, or just inattention. Persons are not paying attention when they're driving on the road. The fatality count presently stands at 46, which is equal to what the entire last year fatality count is. We're still 1+ into this year.
Lockhart also hopes a change to the way police handle drivers suspected of driving under the influence.
The present law is that if I stop you and I suspect that you're under the influence of alcohol, I have to first get your permission to be able to do a urine or blood test on you. The amendment to that law takes that away. It gives the police more power that if we suspect you're under influence and you refuse to submit, then you are arrested, and the courts will take it that you were under the influence of alcohol, and that is why you refuse to do the test. So we're just hoping that probably before the year is out, that piece of legislation would be gazetted.
Meanwhile, an FTX spokeswoman says the company has fired 3 of its top executives, including co-founder Gary Wang. The Wall Street Journal reporting that the other fired executives were engineering director Nishad Singh and Caroline Ellison, who ran FTX Trading and Alameda Research. FTX did not immediately respond to a request from Reuters for comment. According to interviews with several people close to Bankman-Fried and company communications not previously reported, Reuters reports that the company had been secretly taking risks with customer funds to prop up a trading firm owned by Bankman-Fried, which led to the company's collapse. And the Prime Minister seeking to clear the air about claims that members of the PLP received any gifts or contributions from FTX. The Prime Minister also insisting that he has no interest in FTX.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, and what about cabinet ministers? Anything connected to FTX?
I do not know that. In fact, I'm agnostic to it. I don't hold any wallet.
Recent court filings in Delaware reveal FTX owes its top 50 creditors over $300 billion. The Security Commission froze FTX assets and applied to the Supreme Court to appoint Brian Sims Casey as a court-supervised provisional liquidator. 2 other provisional liquidators have since been named. Davis shot down claims that the government has any exposure to the debacle surrounding the company's collapse.
Only issue I'm concerned about, I have positioned the Bahamas to be the leading jurisdiction in the digital assets space. I'm intending to keep that position, and the only thing of concern is reputational consequences, and I'm dealing with that.
And that was $3 billion owed to creditors. While the back and forth over the BPL hedging program continues as the Prime Minister maintains he had no knowledge of the proposal request, a clear contradiction from what the Works Minister told Parliament last week. Berthany McDermott has been following the story.
Days after Works Minister Alfred Sears admitted the Finance Minister, who happens to also be the Prime Minister, rejected recommendations to continue trades for BPL's fuel hedging program, Prime Minister Philip Davis is saying something different.
I had no knowledge of it. I saw no documents about that. Only this weekend I was provided with some information concerning that, which I am now assessing to determine all this misstatements about what actually went on.
While he did say the Ministry of Finance had knowledge of the proposal, the Works Minister also told parliamentarians that the Minister of Finance too saw the proposal.
The draft cabinet paper is addressed to the Minister of Finance. For the Minister of Finance consideration, the Minister of Finance communicated that based on what was presented, it was not supported.
The admission by Sears was a clear contradiction of what both he and the Prime Minister sought to deny for some time now. But today, the Prime Minister doubled down, making it clear he didn't see the request.
He said the Ministry of Finance had knowledge of it. That's a big ministry.
And how you respond?
It was not me.
Sears' comments in Parliament were after opposition leader Michael Pintard said the recent increase in power bills was due to the government's failure to execute the trade. The execution of the trade would have made way for BPL to secure extra fuel volumes at below market prices. This would have allowed BPL to keep its fuel charge in a relatively low range. Davis says the views that were adopted were those of the financial secretary.
What I do know is that the financial secretary had some views about it proceeding.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
Plus, coming up in Sports for the Senior, give you details on the Bahama Hoops event all week long here at the Bahama Convention Center. We'll also give you some details on some of the signings of this past weekend as one of our college athletes heads down to college. That's all coming up in sports.
And later, the dream of home ownership is now a reality for these Pinecrest residents. We have all of the details when our news returns. This is Our News. Welcome back. She's a Bahamian living in the United States and coaching a Power 5 University women's basketball team. She's a part of the visiting team, players and coaches in town for Bahama Hoops. Our Sasha Lightborn got to sit down with her for this exclusive.
Coach Yolette McEwen, affectionately known as Coach Yo, has basketball running through her veins. She's the daughter of legendary coach Gladstone Moon McPhee. Coach Yo is in the Bahamas this week with her Power 5 Ole Miss women's basketball team. And I had the opportunity to sit down with Coach Yo following one of her team's morning shoot-arounds and asked her how it feels to have her team here on home soil.
It's a great feeling of pride. I started to share some of the Bahamian history yesterday with our team to let them understand, you know, the soil that they're playing on and what it means.
But it must be difficult balancing who she is. Coach Yo is not just any ordinary Bahamian woman. She's a wife and a mother to 2 young daughters.
I have a lot of help, so it truly takes a village. I cook probably 3 times a week. You know, I try to go on dates when I can, but it is a challenge, but it's very rewarding, and I think the greatest reward is my daughters. I have 2 daughters that get to see me boss up.
She says her girls are pretty understanding.
Right now, they're not worried about the game. They're at the water park, you know, so that's what they love. You know, they've been on private planes, you know, they've traveled all over the world. This year we go to Europe.
Ole Miss will square off against the Dayton women's basketball team at 8 p.m. tonight at the Bahamas Convention Center. They'll play again on Wednesday against the University of Utah. Now, Coach Yo was not shy during our interview. She shared her candid views on sports in the Bahamas, particularly basketball, and the development of sports programs in the country. We will share that for you later in the week. Reporting for Our News, I'm Sasha Lightbourne.
All right, great report, Sasha. Sounds exciting. While the New Providence Basketball Association kicking off their new season on Saturday night, meanwhile, Bahamas hosting college basketball and a local track star headed to the University of Miami. Marcellus Hall is up now with a check on sports.
Thanks, Natalia. Welcome to Our Sports, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. Well, it was certainly a busy weekend here in the capital, starting with the New Providence Basketball Association as they kicked off their 2022 season at the AF Valley Gym. Let's take a look.
New Providence Basketball Association kicking off its 2022-2023 season on Saturday night at the AF Valley Gym. Division II, first game out of the bat, defending champions, YES Giants, taking on the Rockets in this one and in a rematch of last year's championship series. And guess what? Giants picking up right where they left off. They go ahead to pick up the win here, starting their season off on a good note. Head coach Mark Hanna talking about the team's win and their destination moving forward.
Well, you know, it's our first game out. I have about 7 new guys on the team. 3 of our bigs was not there tonight because of work obligations. They couldn't make it out. We have a 2'6" and a 6'6" missing the game, but we played small ball tonight in the first half. The second half, we saw that they wasn't making many jump shots. So we park it in the zone, and then we bound the ball and push it against them. It's a very good adjustment.
Meanwhile, over at Bahamas, action kicking up there as the week of activities starting off. Lots of college basketball headed that way. Last night, the championship game getting ready to take place, and a pretty good one as Central Florida taking on Santa Clara in the championship. They get the win to claim the title. Meanwhile, in the consolation game, it was Oklahoma State beating DePaul in the consolation bracket. As for today's activity, lots of female basketball going out through the rest of this week as the Pink Flamingo Championships will take place. We'll keep you posted on that. And one of our college standouts, high school standouts, is headed to university from track and field now, as we tell you all about that. On Saturday, signing her letter of intent from Blue Chip Athletics was Kalia Jackson, 17-year-old senior at Raven Gap. She's going to be headed there next year. And one of our top throwers looks as if she's off to a great start. She talked a little bit emotionally about the signing.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone who came out for me today.
And that's your check on sports here on this Monday. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you, Italia.
From a dream to reality, new homeowners get keys to their homes in the Pinecrest subdivision. Plus, Greg is back with your extended weather forecast.
Welcome back to Our News. Temperatures still in the 80s over the next few days. Greg joins us now from the Weather Center with a look at the tropics and your 5-day outlook and the extended weather forecast. Good evening again, Greg.
Thanks again, Natalia, and welcome back, everybody. We're still tracking this stationary front across the northwest Bahamas with a lot of moisture still in place, and that's going to continue the trend throughout the night and into early parts of tomorrow. That front will back up towards the north and eventually exit the area, but by Wednesday, we expect that front to drop back towards the south. So more moisture will be in our forecast by Wednesday. A couple of isolated showers and thunderstorms in forecast then. Tropics quiet, nothing happening out there, remaining quiet, and the tropical season is just about to be over with in another couple of days at the end of the month, and things are remaining quiet. Future forecast showing that moisture plume across our area throughout the night and into tomorrow. We expect the moisture, as I said, to lift back towards the north, and then eventually a lot more moisture will move in across our area as that front sags back towards the south and give us some more showers and thunderstorms in the forecast. Boating forecast for the northwest Bahamas tonight to tomorrow. Small craft portion in effect, and of course rip currents out there. Winds will be easterly at 15 knots, seas running 3 to 5 feet over the ocean, but they will be up to 7 feet along Atlantic exposed shorelines and some swells. Low tide will be at 11:40 tonight for the central and southeast Bahamas. Caution flag for you guys down there as well, but the winds more easterly at 15 to 20 knots, a little stronger, and your seas running 4 to 7 feet in some easterly swells. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your extended forecast, moisture will be with us Tuesday, temperatures in the mid-80s, then we expect that front to lift back towards the north. Eventually by Wednesday, it should get back down towards the south, moving in some more showers in the forecast. But we should see a smattering of some showers and isolated thunderstorms throughout the remainder of the week. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe night, everybody.
Thanks, Greg. The dream of home ownership now a reality. 18 Bahamians are now homeowners following a key presentation in the Pinecrest subdivision today. Prime Minister Philip Davis on hand for the presentation, saying it marks the 85% completion mark of the Pinecrest subdivision.
This is a truly remarkable feat and represents a tremendous achievement for the government of the Bahamas. This is what homes for Bahamians looks like. I repeat that. This is what homes for Bahamians looks like.
All of the 18 homeowners were not present for the presentation. Housing Minister JoBeth Colby-Davis says among the recipients are teachers, healthcare workers, nurses, law enforcement, and the private sector. With her baby in hand, one homeowner described what these keys represent for her family.
Keys represent liberation of freedom. Keys represent access. Yeah. Keys represent ownership. Yeah. Keys represent security. Keys represent opportunity. Keys represent the ability to unlock, to open, and to secure. Today, we received the keys.
What a nice story. And for more stories like this and all of today's top stories, you can visit ournews.bs and you can share all of your favorites with family and friends right from the Our News Facebook page. With that, we thank you for joining us for Our News tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.